Hello and welcome to Ruggles Round Up. It's the portion of our Elevated Mission podcast where we talk about all things sports. We're super excited to bring this episode to you.
Well, let's get started in the Ruggles Roundup first ever NFL mock draft. We're only going to be talking about the first 5 picks in the NFL draft, as I think we have almost 18 teams locked in now for their selections, as we got to find out the wild card and all the playoff action before we find out the entirety of the first round. But those first 5 picks is really where some interesting action happens, as there is some game changers there available.
Yeah, absolutely. We know there's top tier talent at the top of this draft. A lot of people have been excited about this particular draft for quite some time, especially at the QB position. But probably topping every talent, no matter what position group you're talking about, is Marvin Harrison Jr. Just tore it up at the college level, and we're expecting his dad-like stats as he ends up in the NFL here. But I don't think there's any way that if the Bears stay pat at the first pick and they don't trade down or do anything like that, that they're going to go wide receiver. I think they're going to go quarterback. But what do you think, E?
I think that you can't stay at that number 1 overall pick and not take the number 1 quarterback on the board, Caleb Williams. People are willing to give you extra first-round picks, extra second-round picks for this guy. You can't just stay at the first overall pick and select a Marvin Harrison Jr. or maybe the Penn State tackle or Notre Dame's tackle. You can't stay at the first overall pick and select those guys. You want to trade back and let someone else get up there and take them, or you take them yourself. I think Bears are going to stay there. I think they've waited long enough on Justin Fields. Everyone already made their beds with Justin Fields in last offseason when everyone made the statement that he was going to be this year's Jalen Hurts when he was going to take that big step. That didn't happen. And so we are now looking at where we've brought talent on there. They've drafted linemen to fill in and protect him. He has the weaponry to get things done, and it just hasn't worked out. I think Bears have to move off of a very talented quarterback that they may regret moving off of in a few years, but I think you have to for an even better talent in Caleb Williams.
100% agree that Justin Fields cannot remain the starting quarterback at the Bears. They have to, 100% if they stay in that position. I'm actually open to the Bears moving out of that number 1 pick and getting some more draft picks and seeing what they can haul in out of that position. But if they don't get what they want, then you got to take Caleb Williams. It's the only pick to make. And then you got to see what kind of suitors you can get for Justin Fields. You know, everyone thought Justin Fields was going to be who Jordan Love turned out to be this year. So it did still happen in the NFC North. The young talent that finally got to show what they could do, it just wasn't in Chicago. It was just a little bit up the road in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So I think, Justin Fields out, Caleb Williams in. We see where Justin Fields ends up. Maybe Justin Fields ends up down in Atlanta. In the last podcast, we talked about Jim Harbaugh maybe going to Atlanta Falcons to coach those guys up. Might be a nice pair up. Justin Fields, his old nemesis from Ohio State, running the Harbaugh offense. I think actually could be a decent fit with each other and the way they play football. I haven't really thought about that. I'm just coming right off the top of my head, making, wild predictions here. But that's the season we're in, is the draft season, and all kinds of wild things get said.
I think I did tell you that I would love to see Jim Harbaugh get paired up with a quarterback similar to what John Harbaugh's gotten, and that is a run-first quarterback. And so that would be an interesting spot for the Bears to then move off of Justin Fields and give an opportunity for a team like maybe Atlanta to build a run-first squad with Bijan Robinson threatening on one end. Then you got Justin Fields running off the edge on the other, and then you also got the dropping back, tossing it to maybe a Kyle Pitts as well. And so I think that would be an interesting spot if the Bears wanted to look for the Atlanta in a trade situation. But honestly, I think that the Bears, I would personally stay there and collect, get Caleb Williams. I just don't think whatever you're going to pick up, whatever happens there, it's just been too much surrounding Justin Fields, too many people and too many things in his ear. And I think he just needs to find a new home.
Well, we go to pick 2. We got the Washington Commanders sitting in that second place spot. And I'm, interested to see what they do. You got Sam Howell, okay? He's looked good at the beginning of the season, had some rough spots. Maybe he's a great number 2 there. And, if that's the case, is that's where you've got Sam Howell, then do you go back-to-back quarterback picks? If you do, is that Drake May? Is that Michael Penix? Where are you going there with that second pick as the Commanders?
Okay, well, I think because Commanders are going to have a new coach heading into this next season, I think you're going to be expecting them to be trying to set a new precedent on the team, which is always drafting a new quarterback, a new leader for that locker room. And so I think Drake May at that second overall pick is a gimme there as well. Now, if they were keeping the same roster, or if they somehow sneak away one of these veteran guys like a Mike Vrabel in the coaching system, I think you could end up with a Commanders team that goes out there and drafts a Marvin Harrison Jr. and goes and says, we're going to make Sam Howell better by giving him the talent. He can be the Kirk Cousins tossing it to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson on this team.
Yeah, no, the Commanders have seen it before, right? So, they were the first ones to get Kirk Cousins on the scene to kind of make that all work. Vrabel's seen it before, right? Kind of a quarterback that's maybe not thought of that he can get the job done, and then bring him from the Dolphins over to Tennessee and get some nice years out of him. So Vrabel's done that as well. I like that pick. He's an Ohio State alum. Bring in another Ohio State alum in for Marvin Harrison Jr. I actually like that pick a lot. I think whenever you pick the most talented player in the draft, even if it's not the particular position of need, I think you never go wrong with that pick. And there's a lot of options at quarterback, I think, during this offseason, and we'll see where it all lands. But yeah, maybe even bring Kirk Cousins on back. Hey, why don't you come on back to Washington? You used to live around here. We liked what you did when you were here. Come on back and we can have some fun.
Yeah, I think Commanders are in an interesting spot for sure. And I think it really comes down to what that coaching staff is going to be looking to do when they come in. Next up at that number 3 spot, the Patriots is kind of running off of what the Commanders do, in my opinion. I think if Commanders pick Drake May, then Patriots take Marvin Harrison Jr. I think if the Commanders take Marvin Harrison Jr., Patriots take Drake May.
I think you might be right on that. I mean, they have similar needs that the Commanders have as well. And so I wouldn't be surprised at it. Or we have seen a run on quarterback sometimes in the draft, and they could then go, oh, do we go with Penix? Get that, that third quarterback off the board. I think that's early for Michael Penix, but you know what? We've seen it in the past happen where guys get drafted maybe a little bit earlier than where their status was, but hey, position of need for the franchise, get the job done. And sometimes it's actually paid off because everyone's going, oh, that's way too early to draft Patrick Mahomes. He comes from a losing record and low, completion percentage and all that kind of stuff. It worked out pretty well for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, you also don't want to forget about LSU's Jaden McDaniels, I think is his name, as he's a dynamic player, Heisman Trophy winner, and so I think he's a guy that could be an option at that number 3 spot as well. But I think in my opinion, I think top 3 should be drafted they should be in some order: Caleb Williams, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr. Anybody sneaking into that top 3 would feel a little weird.
No, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a difference maker. Could make a number 2 quarterback look pretty good, and you already have some decent talent at the wide receiver position for the Commanders, for the Patriots. So if you just add in that other piece, that may be the difference for a quarterback looking different. It's just like we saw Mac Jones play at an all-pro level, right? He went to the Pro Bowl in his rookie year. Hasn't looked like that recently. We see if he can get his confidence back. Zappe finished out the season this year, but we also got to see. At the time of us recording this podcast, we don't know what's happening with Bill Belichick yet. In the Patriots. Where does that go? Because he's been the guy that not only cooks, but, he buys the groceries at the grocery store as well. What does the new guy that comes in, what is he doing? Is he just the cook, or is he actually shopping as well? And we're not sure on that really until we find out, is Belichick back or not?
Yeah, if Belichick is back, I think that changes a lot of my different situations. As I think then Joe Alt becomes a interesting prospect there for Notre
Mm-hmm.
Dame, as he loves his offensive lineman. He'll draft an offensive lineman every chance he gets. You also got Fashanu out of Penn State, that
Yep.
offensive tackle as well. I think either of those guys could sneak into that spot if you have the input of a Bill Belichick. And so
Yep.
that would be an interesting spot once you get to number 3 if Bill Belichick is still there. Number 4, we got Cardinals, which I think Cardinals all year long, we had been talking about quarterback going into that roster. But now they've kind of fallen outside of that Caleb Williams, Drake May conversations. Where do they go at the number 4 spot?
You know what? That's an interesting place to be. Cardinals have a lot of needs to fill. Maybe they just try to fill in just best player available at that moment. It's great for them to get another good offensive lineman. I like your pick there with Alt out of Notre Dame. When you mentioned that earlier about with Belichick, if he's still in that position with the Patriots. I like Alt here as well. Maybe they go with a surprise pick. Take Brock Bowers out of Georgia. Just bring that winning system into their team and just get a winning culture going there. It's going to be interesting. I don't have as good a pulse on where the Cardinals might go in this draft. They have a lot of needs to fill.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing with them is that I personally lean for them is Neighbors out of LSU, just because they took McBride in the draft just a few years ago, their tight end, and he's looked pretty good in these last few years. So I don't know if they necessarily need that receiving tight end right now. And then Neighbors, I mean, in a lot of NFL drafts, would be the number 1 guy, as he is a great wide receiver. I compare him to DJ Moore as a wide receiver, as he gets out of his breaks fantastically. He can beat you on every level, which is a great thing to have for your number 1 wideout. And that's what Malik Neighbors can be for your team, is a number 1 wide receiver. So I'm going to say that they're going to go with that number 1 wideout. But I do think they would have to take a really big look at Fashanu, the Penn State tackle, as he is by far the best pure pass protector in the draft.
Yeah. Well, I love that Neighbors pick that you were talking about. Just a smooth route runner, good hands. He's got great quickness coming out of the break. I really love the way he plays football. And so he's going to be a great asset to wherever he goes. That's my feeling. And that would be a great fit there in Arizona as well. So it's going to be interesting in my opinion, where Arizona does on that pick. Then even more interesting, because we don't know who the head coach is again in this, is the Chargers. You've got a great quarterback. You have a bunch of talent on the defense, but I think they're going to have to let some of that talent on the defense because of salary cap issues and people entering the free agency go. So do they try to refill that defense a little bit? Do they stay with the offense and try to give additional weapons, to the offensive side of the thing? I don't know. Where do you think the Chargers go?
See, the problem is I think there is not a single defensive player in this draft worth a top 5 pick. That's my
Yeah.
issue. You got some really good players. You got Iowa's defensive interior lineman, Newton. You got Nate Wiggins, the cornerback, as well as Cooper DeJean out of Iowa, the cornerback. Those are all very, very talented players, but they're
Yeah.
not on the Sauce Gardner level. They're not on the, top of the line D ends. You're just not
Yeah.
seeing that here at the top of the draft. You're not even seeing a interior defensive lineman like Jalen Carter available in this draft. And so I think it's going to
Correct.
be all offensive players coming out in that first 5 picks. And I think at that number 5 pick is where you are going to either see the reverse. I think, like I said, with the second and third pick, where Commanders pick Drake May, Patriots get Marvin Harrison Jr., you're in a very similar situation with Cardinals Chargers. I think they both have similar needs in what they need. One just failed at getting their good young wide receiver last year when Quentin Johnston ended up being one of the bigger first-round wide receiver busts we've seen in recent years. And then you got the other team in the Cardinals that just need an influx of talent. And so Malik Neighbors would be a great add to either of those teams. I think Brock Bowers could be an even bigger solution in the Chargers system than in the Cardinals system, like you suggested. And so maybe a Brock Bowers, but I think probably for the best solution is Joe Alt out of Notre Dame.
Yeah, no, that's a great fit. Always can go offensive line. You never have enough good offensive linemen for sure on any team, and so that's always a good pick. I'll add a tight end even if I have an all-pro tight end, just because I can never have too many tight ends. I got tight ends and H-backs. I'll put 3 on the field at a time. That's just the way I like to coach football. But that's not usually how guys go with with all that stuff. But if they go the defensive side, I could even see maybe a Dallas Turner out of Alabama, nice edge guy. Do they lose one of their edge guys this next year? But I think you're right. They probably stay on the offensive side of the ball if they're staying there. But I also think it's a great opportunity for the Chargers. Again, a team that's desperate right there. They see guys coming off the board, someone further down in the first round, and going, man, we need this guy. We got to get this guy. Maybe trading up and giving them a boatload to get into that number 5 position, and say, okay, maybe we trade that away and we go see what we can get later on, because Chargers have a lot of talent on their roster already. Who knows what the new coach comes in is looking for and what they want to add to that. And maybe they feel like they can get it a little later in the draft, and then, just add tons of talent, pull the Jimmy Johnson, right? And, try to get talent later on in the draft, whatever. Maybe trade away even an asset, maybe an older guy that's got a little, some injuries, because they've got a bunch of those guys, really talented guys that miss parts of seasons with injuries. The Chargers got those guys. Maybe trade that plus a pick and get a boatload, in the draft. We can see what the Chargers do, but you're probably right at that point. Probably no defensive player that probably is good enough to go already in the draft, but you never know. I'm always amazed at what you see as the draft, moves on, even as we go to the combine, as we go into these pro days. Amazing to watch how guys in the conversation changes from what it is right now. Right now, the conversation is based on actual football play. Probably the best conversation you should be having. But
yes,
things start getting wild. I get, googly-eyed over the stats as we see the combine coming out. I was just talking to your sister as she's down working combine prep with a bunch of guys down at Bomberino in Miami, and she's talking about all these guys that are just flying in, Michigan guys, Florida State guys, Alabama, LSU guys flying in to work with them. And as she's working with these top draft picks and everything, and just the amount of science in training these guys not to play football, in the science to train them to be ready for the combine. And she said they expect to take 0.2 to 0.3 off of their 40 times when they're there working. And they literally are looking at everything from heel strikes to toe strikes to where their knees are at in their running form, and they're correcting and working all this stuff. Tons of band work, tons of technique work, and just teaching them the art of the vertical leap, the art of the 40-yard dash, and becoming, better at that. Because a lot of these guys are not track guys. So they got to get a lot of training on just even, how to run a 40 properly and to get that best time. So it's amazing. I mean, you got these guys that are 22, 23 years old. They're 8 weeks down eating the most strict diet they've ever eaten, trying to prepare for this one time to run 140 or to go, bench 225 the most amount of times that they can, whatever that is for them. And just the science of all that stuff. It's pretty amazing, pretty interesting.
Oh, it 100% is, and it makes or breaks your draft stock. I think that,
Yeah.
I mean, I only talked about Neighbors as the second overall wide receiver in this draft, but Romo Dunze is one good 40-yard dash from passing up Malik Neighbors as the number 2 prospect in this draft out of those wide receivers, as they're both very, very talented. I think those two are going to be locked in as that number 2 wide receiver in the draft. They're both going to be competing for it, and I think it's going to come down to combine numbers, who's more athletic, to see who ends up getting drafted over the other.
Yeah, it's an amazing process. What we've gotten this the draft, it's a whole entertainment industry. It feels like of its own. Just everyone gets excited about the combines and the pro days, and then the actual draft itself. And I'm guilty. I'm here for it all. I love this time of year, and it's fun stuff.
Oh yeah, one last thing, Senior Bowl coming up soon.
Oh yeah,
One guy I'm very excited to see is Oregon's quarterback Bo Nix, his last opportunity to kind of prove himself in this Senior Bowl. Now we've kind of moved off of him as a media standpoint, as it's all went to Penix, who's in the national championship. It went to Daniels, who won the Heisman, and then obviously Caleb Williams and Drake May, and then even JJ McCarthy has seemed to pass up Bo Nix in those conversations. I'm really excited to see this Senior Bowl, to see how Bo Nix performs, and I think he could really rise up in these draft stocks.
Yeah, quarterbacks get hot, and all of a sudden, or a guy can get cold. One pro day, and you don't put the glove on, and then all of a sudden you throw some bad balls, and your stock just drops. So you never know what happens with these things, and it's so minuscule what can change your fortunes. And we're talking about not just millions of dollars, but tens of millions of dollars for these guys as this rolls on. But no, it's going to be exciting. I'm excited to see where, in particular, the Bears go, whether they stay, whether they go, where, what happens. Do they get a new coach in? Do they stay where they're at? All those things. I did see they let their offensive coordinator, actually, as we're recording this podcast, they let their offensive coordinator go today with the Bears. So they'll be bringing in a new OC for sure. And usually that means when they let the OC go, that the head coach may be staying, because they're trying to fill that spot underneath. But we're going to know as the days come forward. It's awesome to talk about all these draft picks. Well, thank you for watching and listening to Ruggles Round Up on the Elevated Mission podcast. Make sure, if you're on YouTube, you click the subscribe and you click the like button. We love that you're out there listening and watching us talk about all things sports. We'll see you next time.